With training camp just around the corner, we break down two important decisions that will impact the Islanders season. We're going to talk about that and a lot more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers from 1972 to the modern era. So glad you could join us to talk a little Islanders hockey today. We are in September. Want to wish everyone a happy Labor Day as we have the holiday weekend today, and I always love this holiday because, among other things, we're in September, and it means that hockey is just around the corner. Islanders training camp just a couple of weeks away, so we're going to start talking about some of the things to expect. One of them is the backup goalie battle. There are 3 candidates for that position. We're going to talk about that, plus the dilemma the Islanders face with their 7th defenseman, and a key Islanders prospect has decided to spend the next year or 2 in Russia. We're going to break all of that down and what it means on today's show. We start with the backup goalie battle. And look, I know most fans, and we did put a poll up on our YouTube page, most fans, myself included, ideally would like to see a healthy Semyon Varlamov back as the backup goalie for the New York Islanders this year. Varley only played 10 games last year, but realistically, if he can stay healthy, and at age 37, that's not a given, but if he can recover from the injury and stay healthy, I think he gives the Islanders the best option out of the 3 candidates to be that backup. First of all, he has the experience. He has the statistics, the career accomplishments. And he also has a good, long-standing relationship with Ilya Sorokin. They understand each other. Varley has mentored Sorokin over the years. I think the fact that they are both Russian helps. But ultimately, with 2 years left this year and next year on his contract, Varlamov will likely, if he's healthy, be the backup. But there's 2 issues here. Number one, can he recover from the offseason, from the surgery and the offseason workouts and be ready to start the season on time? If the answer to that is no, we go on our flow chart to the next box. But even if the answer is yes, the next question is, can Varley stay healthy over the course of an 82-game season? And look, let's remind everybody that because of the fact that this is an Olympic year and that NHL players are returning to the Olympics, that the Islanders have 15 back-to-back games this year, which means beyond the shadow of a doubt that you need a backup goalie who is ready to give you, let's say out of those 15 back-to-backs, your backup is going to play one of them, let's say 14 out of the 15 times. And everydayers are aware, because we've mentioned this on the show, over the last 2 years, especially, you cannot overwork Ilya Sorokin. I would like to keep him between 50 and 55 starts, 50 to 55 games over the course of the year. whether or not this Islander team is contending for a playoff spot will certainly influence that. And the quality of the backup goalie will influence that number as well. But ultimately, when you start overworking Ilya Sorokin, he either gets hurt or his level of play starts to fall off. And the Islanders cannot afford, if they hope to make a playoff run, not to have a healthy and an Ilya Sorokin who is on top of his game. So we'll see, whether or not they can do that. But Varley, I think, in my mind, is the first choice. But there's a lot of ifs. You then have David Rittich and Marcus Hogberg. Let's start with Hogberg because he was with the team last year. And his overall numbers, they don't look good. 2, 6, and 3. A 3.38 goals against average and 8.78 save percentage. Those are, not acceptable NHL numbers. And yeah, it's a limited sample size, 11 starts, 15 games. I get it. But it was also for Hogberg a tale of two seasons. He got injured in the middle of the year. Before the injury, he was red hot. He was playing lights out. He had a 930 roughly save percentage and goals against average under 2. When he came back, he just didn't have a good set of games, and it just got kind of ugly. And the result is that the final stats look like what they look like. So we're hoping that, if Hogberg is called upon, we see the pre-injury version of Marcus Hogberg. But ultimately, at this point, Hogberg is not 23 or 24. He's not a kid anymore. And he is what he is, at this stage in his career. And again, nothing wrong with that. But you're not going to get, starter level performances from Marcus Hogberg game in and game out. His career goals against average, 339 in the NHL. His career save percentage, 890. He's 11, 23, and 12 as an NHL goalie. Did better over in Sweden, where he played from 2021 to 2024. But, he is, in my mind, more or less a quadruple A kind of a goalie here in North America, where, he's a solid AHL goalie, but he's really like a number 3 goalie in your depth chart, that veteran 3 at this point in his career. He's 30 years old. He'll turn 31 in November. He is what he is. And I would say the same about David Rittich, who's 33, 6'4", 205 as compared to the 6'5" Hogberg. But, Rittich also kind of, the numbers are better overall. A 278 goals against average, a 904 save percentage. He has a winning record as an NHL goalie with Calgary, briefly Toronto, Nashville, Winnipeg, and the LA Kings. Put together a great year in 2023-2024, a 215 goals against, 13-6-3 record, 921 save percentage. Couldn't replicate that, though, last year with 34 games, a 281 goals against, an 887 save percentage, and still a winning record, 16-14-2. So in my mind, I want Varley first and foremost, if he's able to do it. We don't know if he'll be healthy enough to start the season, and we don't know if he'll stay healthy if he does begin the season with the team. If it's not going to be Varley, for whatever reason, the battle for 3 and 4 will be between Rittich and Hogberg. And the thing is this, long term, it doesn't make sense for the Islanders to keep both. So we have to see whether or not they do that, whether they trade one, waive one at the end of training camp, unless one of them stays with the NHL Islanders to start the season because Varley isn't ready, and then the other one plays in Bridgeport. But if Varley is healthy, keeping both of them in Bridgeport really doesn't make sense, because you want, ideally, in your AHL affiliate to have one veteran goalie who you can call up at the drop of a hat to fill in a game or two if you need him, and one prospect goalie, one younger guy who the veteran mentors and who is learning the trade and hopefully developing into a future NHL player. So this battle is going to be interesting. And how the Islanders, could I see the Islanders, for example, loaning out Hogberg to a team in Sweden, for example, if Varley is healthy and ready to start the season? Maybe. It doesn't make a lot of sense to send one of them to the ECHL. So it's going to be an interesting decision for Matthew Darche, whether it's trade, loan, put on waivers, whatever the decision is. If Varlamov is healthy, figuring out what to do with one of those two veteran backups will be interesting. And if Varley isn't healthy, the camp battle is one of those guys will start the season for the Islanders as the backup goalie. We will see how this all plays out, but it is something to look at as camp gets closer. One other battle that we're going to talk about on today's show: who's going to be the seventh defenseman? That'll be an interesting one. We'll talk about that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. The NFL season is almost here, just a couple of days away, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. That's $300 in bonus bets. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Some people like player props. Some people love to build a same-game parlay or even betting live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your favorite team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. So, are you ready to play? Just download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. That's FanDuel.com. Check it out today. We have an important request. Locked On wants to hear from you. And what we want to know is we'll put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and to make your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and to answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. That's right. lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in our show notes. And thanks for helping us out. So another important battle coming is who's going to be the seventh defenseman. And this is kind of tricky because some of the candidates, you look at this, the defense roster puts the Islanders in an interesting position. And I'll explain why. You've got four players who are almost guaranteed to be in the everyday lineup if they're healthy. Alexander Romanov just signed the big contract. Ryan Polak, Adam Pelech, veterans who, are among the top 4 defensemen this team has right now. Say what you want about what that says about the team. And Tony DeAngelo, who is by far the best offensive defenseman that the team has as far as skating and the like, at least among guys with experience. You also then have Scott Mayfield, a veteran who had a great plus minus last year on a team that struggled badly in that department, but who is, 32, 33 years old this year, and whose style of play doesn't necessarily fit what Patrick Roy likes to do. You've got Adam Boqvist, who his style is more conducive to Roy's desired situation. Could also play a little forward. And then you've got some depth guys. The three most prominent depth guys are Matthew Schaefer, your first overall pick, Isaiah George, and Ethan Bear. And let's just say that you've got Boqvist, Mayfield, Schaefer, George, and Bear basically fighting for 2 spots in the lineup and then the 7th defense battle. And it'll be interesting to see how Matthew Darche and Patrick Roy handle the situation. But I'm going to come out and say this. Neither Isaiah George nor Matthew Schaefer should be the regular 7th defenseman. Yeah, okay, first of all, with Schaefer, we don't know if he's going to be on the team all year long. He will get up to those 9 games that you're allowed without burning a year on the rookie contract. So we'll see whether or not he proves that he's ready to be in the NHL. And if he's ready, it wouldn't bother me if, let's say, he sat out every 3rd game or maybe the 2nd day of some back-to-backs. To me, that wouldn't bother me. But he's not going to sit in the press box for 50, 60 games. That doesn't make sense. And it's the same with Isaiah George. Why? Schaefer will turn 18 in a few days. George is 21, which is still very young for a defenseman. Defensemen, as you know, take a little longer to develop than forwards typically do. The worst thing you could do to Isaiah George or Matthew Schaefer, although I don't think it's even reasonable to think that Schaefer will sit in the press box, for 50, 60 games. But a young defenseman needs to develop. They need to develop, therefore they need to play. And so Isaiah George, who could go back to the AHL, is better off playing 65 games in the AHL, getting, top pair minutes, power play time, penalty kill time, whatever role he's going to take. Definitely penalty kill, probably some second unit power play, but we'll see how Bridgeport's roster stacks up. But you don't want to have a young kid sitting in the press box most nights. Better to let him play in the minors than to not let him play in the NHL, or, better to let him play 60, 65 games in Bridgeport than to play 15 to 20 games in the NHL. To me, the 3 guys who make the most sense as a 7th defenseman, depending on who Patrick Roy feels comfortable playing and what line combinations or defensive pair combinations he wants to put forth, and obviously, depending on who's healthy, because that's never a given in this league. Islander fans remember how banged up the blue line was a year ago. But to me, Boqvist, Mayfield, or Bear make the most sense as a 7th defenseman if they don't win one of the top 6 spots. And again, sitting Matthew Schaefer every once in a while, not a problem. bringing him along a little slower, letting him play 50, 55 games. They did a similar thing to Noah Dobson in his rookie year, where he didn't play every game. But, when he played, they brought him along slowly. They paired him with Zdeno Chara at one point. All the things they did to try to ease his transition. But he still played more than half the games that year. And so I would much rather, Ethan Bear, for example, almost like a perfect seventh defenseman. Guy in his late 20s, AHL, very good in the AHL, more of a fringe guy or third pair guy in the NHL, can be ready at the drop of a hat, but may not be good enough to play every game. To me, he would make sense. Mayfield, if he doesn't win a spot in the top 6, would make sense, although it's an expensive contract to have the guy sitting in the press box every day. But again, that contract every day, as we've talked about the contract and its length and the no trade clause and all the other problems. It was one of those Lou Lamoriello contracts that left a lot of people scratching their head. But you can't have Schaefer or George be the primary seventh defenseman. Even Boqvist at this point could develop into more, although I think he pretty much at this stage is what he is. But I'm less uncomfortable with him being a seventh defenseman if push comes to shove. Again, decisions will be made based on health and performance in training camp and in the preseason. You got the lefty-righty thing you got to figure out. Lots of things that we're going to find out over the course of training camp. And I'll tell you this, training camp this year, more competition than we've seen in recent years for roster spots, for spots in the lineup. That is also encouraging for the New York Islanders. And again, season getting real close, and I can't wait to see how it all plays out. Also, by the way, next week on September 8th, we go back to our 5 shows per week, Monday through Friday schedule. So make sure you remember that, and we'll be back on our full weekday schedule starting September 8th. So mark that in your calendars, and we'll be here all year long covering your New York Islanders. A key Islanders prospect announced he is not coming to North America this year. We'll talk about that and its impact on his development. Plus, for our Islanders birthday of the day, a guy who scored 40 goals in his final season with the Islanders in the mid to late 2000s. Let's see if you can guess who this guy is. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. So a little news over the weekend, and again, I'm not sitting here saying that this is the end of the world, but at the same time, it's important to sort of keep track of things like this. Danil Prokarov signing a 2-year, 2-way contract with Dynamo Moscow of the KHL. He is the Islanders' second-round pick, 45th overall in this year's NHL draft. He was on a PTO that expired Friday with Dynamo Moscow, and I hope I'm even coming remotely close to saying that, right? He had been drafted by the Sarnia Sting in the Canadian Juniors import draft. And I think it would have been a little better for the Islanders if he would have gone to Sarnia and gotten used to the different size rink in North America and the style of play in North America. But he chose to remain home and probably going to play in the equivalent of the AHL in Russia this year. And again, hopefully he will be able to grow as a player and make a good impression. I get the feeling, based on what his coach said, Alexei Kudashov, here is a quote from Dynamo Moscow's official website, said he is a very young guy and he's only taking his first steps in adult hockey. Everything is new for him now. All the players are ready. The only question is when the dream will start to be realized. So he's now under contract until the end of May 2027. Realistically, that is his next opportunity, most likely, to come to North America. Now, yeah, sometimes these contracts are terminated early, but again, I don't think it's a bad situation if when this contract expires and he turns 20, he then signs an entry-level deal with the Islanders. He'll be eligible at age 20 to play in Bridgeport and hopefully, can start making that transition. Would it possibly have saved a year or a part of a year if he would have come to Sarnia and played in North America right away? Maybe, but you got to remember something else. He's an 18-year-old kid. And, he's going to play against adults if he makes the KHL at some point during the next 2 years when he's under contract. But that is difficult enough. But when you add for an 18-year-old kid to be in a new country where he may not speak the language as well, culturally different, being far away from your family and friends, it's a lot to ask of an 18-year-old kid. And maybe it is the best thing for him to go play in Moscow Dynamo's organization, and maybe even eventually in the big club with the big club in the KHL, and then come over. He's a highly regarded prospect, second-round pick, big guy, lots of potential. Let's hope he can realize it, and let's hope Matthew Darche can work things out and make his transition here as smooth as possible. Time now for our Islanders' birthday of the day, and tomorrow will be the 52nd birthday of former Islanders forward Jason Blake, the Moorhead, Minnesota native. Spent 3 years at the University of North Dakota, wasn't drafted, made his NHL debut with the Kings in 98-99, played 1 game, scored his first NHL goal, joined the Islanders in 2000-2001, and then in 2002-2003, hit the 25-goal mark for the first time. His best year with the Islanders, 2006-2007. 40 goals, 69 points, and 34 penalty minutes. Then went on to play for the Leafs, the Ducks, and hung up his skates after the 2011-2012 season. Had some health issues as well. Finished his career with 213 goals in 871 games, 486 points, 455 penalty minutes. Add 6 goals and 11 points in 30 playoff games. And basically all but 6 of those playoff games came with the Islanders. One of his better games, how about March 19th, 2004, Islanders hosting the Wild. Dwayne Rollison, the goalie for the Wild. Rick DiPietro, the goalie for the Islanders. And in this game, our Islanders' birthday of the day, Jason Blake opens the scoring late in the first period. That's his 20th goal of the year. Yanni Niinimaa and Michael Pekka with the assists, 1-0 Isles. In the second period, the Islanders are shorthanded as Pekka is in the box for hooking, but Jason Blake, our Islanders' birthday of the day, pots a shorty. Dave Scatchard with the assist. That makes it 2-0 Islanders. After Andrew Brunette pulls Minnesota to within a goal, our Islanders' birthday of the day, Jason Blake completes the hat trick with an empty net goal. Scatchard and Mark Parrish with the assist. The Hattie for Jason Blake. Islanders beat Minnesota 3-1, 16 saves for Rick DiPietro. Islanders out shooting Minnesota 24-17. But for Jason Blake, he had 3 goals on 4 shots. He was on ice for 18 minutes, 48 seconds. He was a +3. And obviously, he had the game winner since he scored all 3 Islander goals. Jason Blake, the last 40-goal scorer for the Islanders, he is our Islanders' birthday of the day. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast. There is no off-season. We're bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter most with the local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. I know we have a couple of questions. Like to get 1 or 2 more before Wednesday's show so we could talk about what's on your mind on the show. So send us an email at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. If you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You could follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long, and it's always great to talk Islanders hockey with you anytime. Everydayers, we're back on Wednesday. We will dip into the mailbag, and we'll have the latest Islanders news, notes, and happenings as we get you ready for training camp, which is coming up in just a couple of weeks as we get closer and closer to hockey. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.